Good afternoon and welcome everyone to another episode of Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural with our two legal experts, Edward Pichardo Esquire and Royce Russell Esquire. And myself, Dr. Stacey N.C. Grant, our producer for the show. I want to thank you for tuning in every week, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays. Thank you for sharing the show. Thank you for your commentary and letting us know that what we are sharing is helpful. You're learning a lot and you're able to also know how to advocate for yourselves and where to go when you do need the legal advice from two gentlemen who practice day in and day out advocating for those who don't have a voice. So, looking forward to another robust discussion today. But before that, let's let our legal experts say hello. Senor Preciado.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes, mi gente, my peoples. How you doing today? Welcome to Speaking Legally. I believe you're going to find this show quite fulfilling, educational, as well as spiritually uplifting. The topics are very timely, so enjoy.
Thank you, Senor Preciado. Mr. Russell, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. I just want to welcome everybody to another episode. Although the facts and the names may change, the legal issues and the education from it will probably always remain the same. So use it for now and save it for the future. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. So, we have been including in our show moments of respect and prayers and uplift when someone transitions, especially those in our community who have had an impact and whose public transition has affected many people. And unfortunately, what we're sharing today is a symptom of a greater problem with numbers rising due to COVID and other challenges. We lost two dynamic individuals who everyone thought were okay, seemingly great careers and doing the thing that they love to do, and both made decisions to take their lives. So we definitely want to send our prayers up for the family of Chesley Hurst and Kevin Ward, as I can only imagine, and having experienced someone close who made that decision, it's a lot on those that are left behind. And it just speaks to the fact that mental health is something that we all have to be conscious about, and culturally being open to getting help and not suffering in silence. You don't suffer in silence because you wear some badge of honor. You ask for help because you need to remain strong, not because you're weak. And we need to change the conversations around the stigma of going for support and getting counseling. It's just to help you cope and deal with what you need to deal with, and they're licensed professionals who can help. So if we see something, the MTA loves to see something, say something. I think that applies to just checking in on even the strongest of those that you love in your family and friends, because you never know what's going on the inside of someone.
Yeah, I'll just add to that adage, not only if you see something, say something, you seek someone. You know what I mean? You make sure that you seek the help that you need. A lot of times people associate any type of mental or emotional challenges with something tragic that happened in your life or something that you cannot cope with. And I think that there is another body of information that we really need to look at. Sometimes there are just imbalances that you're born with, imbalances that has nothing to do with an event or a series of events that make up who you are. And that's why if you see something you need to say, if you see something, you need to say something, and you need to seek the help. As you stated before, the days of where you associate and try to backtrack to some childhood or some interaction, you may never find closure on that. It just might be something that's built within that needs attention.
I mean, what I thought about when this story first appeared in the media, I thought about the level of isolation that people have been experiencing during this pandemic. And, I hope this young woman didn't die because she didn't have, people around her that were checking in on her and making sure that she was okay and to provide her comfort. I just feel so sad for her. She was She was an attorney. She was, she won this pageant. Apparently, they said she was, very progressive and conscious and willing to, confront, challenges I believe she was also a host on Extra, I believe, the
Yeah.
television show. You look at her life and you would think that, it's the ideal life, and then you get this. And like Royce mentioned, sometimes you can have all these things, but if there's something there, in terms of suffering from some level of chronic depression, some sort of imbalance, that can overtake all of those things. So may she rest in peace, and safe journeys.
And we look at Kevin Ward. I look at his picture, and we had this before. We discussed this before. Like, I know that guy, right? I don't know him, but I do know him, right? It may come to pass that I actually know him if I really, really go through my brain, but I know him, right? And once again, it takes a lot. People think, oh, he killed himself. That's cowardly. It takes a lot of courage to do that. It takes a lot of courage to harm yourself. You get a splinter, you get a pimple, you get a mark. It takes a lot to rectify that, to heal it, because the pain is coming. So how overwhelming must the pain have been to bypass that feeling that you're going to feel before it's all over? And I see you have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline on there. Hopefully, our listeners who know someone who may know of someone, they can provide this information to them, and our viewers can take this down and share it.
Absolutely. And, it's important to have resources. This is one of many, but it's one that's broadly shared. There's smaller support groups, advocacy groups, outreach groups. There's help, which is the bottom line. And this is where the legal meets the cultural, and culturally, let's just have the conversations and the safe places where we can really just talk about what's hurting us, what challenges we may be feeling. And, I read a great blog post today, particularly about African American women, and just understanding how to take off the cape and get the help that you need, and not let the burdens of everyone else and everything else weigh you down. So we just wanted to share the importance of the conversation, and once again, give our condolences to the families. So now we get into the legal. We touched on this story as we were closing out our show last week, and it was around, liable. Just, can you really get yourself in a whole lot of trouble out here sharing information that is false about other people? So in this particular case, Cardi B was awarded 1.25 million because of the false information that this blogger shared about her. So we wanted to get an opportunity for our legal experts to just share their thoughts on it, as well as just some solid information that you can move forward with, understanding how these cases get processed, and just to be careful that you don't end up on the other side of being prosecuted for being out of line with someone's character.
I when I saw this case, obviously what makes the headlines, Cardi B, but on Speaking Legally, we, at least and I want to make sure that there's an educational piece that goes along with it, right? It's enough just to read the headline and say Cardi B won, but what did she win, and what was she really suing about? Like, what is libel? What is slander? And why do people in the media say allegedly on the radio, allegedly, or they use the word in legal terms, Ed, upon information and belief, right? They're not saying it's true. They're saying upon information and belief, allegedly, reportedly, right? Not really signing their name on a dotted line to information that's passed on. Because if you do that, if you take something that is false, such in the case of libel, and you write it down and perpetuate it out there, there's a cause of action, right? If you do the same with slander, which is verbally take false information and put it out there, you might be liable for a cause of action. And you have to understand, obviously, you have to show in any legal cause of action, there has to be liability. That means Tasha K did something, said something, acted in some way, and then there has to be damages. What's the damage, right? What has occurred, based upon that false statement? What was the result? And if you can prove that you were damaged, then you come out with an award, and then we could talk about how you collect or if you collect. But that is a true uphill battle when you talk about libel and you talk about slander. It is not just someone said something about me and so therefore I'm going to sue. You really have to show the damages, and that's why you only see, most of the time, majority of the time, is people, public figures,
And
right?
if I may, just for the audience, basically libel has four elements. One, as Royce stated earlier, false statement. The statement has to be false. Second, it has to be published to a third party. Okay, so it can't be, the
Stand in
person
front of
did
the
a
building
false.
talking to one another. That's not going to be enough.
Exactly. Third, a fault amounting to at least negligence, which is, what we're talking about in terms of the statement can't be inadvertent. It has to be fault to at least a level where you can claim that it was negligently made. And this is what Royce was alluding to, that it caused a special harm. Okay, you have to be able to quantify those damages, and that's why normally, it's somebody in the public sphere, like a celebrity, is usually the one that's able to bring it to that level. Now, there is this thing called per se libel, which falls into certain categories: statements that injure career or trade, imputing a loathsome disease. Like if you're trying to say somebody has AIDS or something. In this case, Tasha K was trying to say that Cardi B has herpes and that she was a prostitute, or a charge of a serious crime. Like you claim, oh yeah, that guy, he murdered somebody, or that, and that's usually considered per se, just because the statement of itself, can cause so much harm. And imputing unchastity, which in this case falls into that same category, trying to say that this woman is less than virtuous or unchaste. So just wanted to put that out there for the audience.
And the audience also should note for the record that in most cases, not all, if what you're saying is true, then guess what? You have a great defense. But you have to prove it to be true, right? So if you say Royce Russell is a thief and my career is damaged because of that, and I come after you saying, oh no, you know what? That's libel. I'm suing you. And we go into court and you go, well, here's the tape of you stealing the bag of chips. What are you talking about? You are a thief. That's a perfect defense because it is the truth. And there's no way of getting around the truth. So you
Well, in your
look
case,
at,
it's going to be cookies, right, Royce?
in my case, it would be cookies. That's right, brother. You got that right.
For
Stop
those in
giving
the
away the
audience,
secrets.
my friend Royce loves cookies, so I just wanted to
Stop
throw
giving
that in
away the
there.
secrets right now. Don't give away the secrets. You know what I
He's
mean?
spilling too much tea, Ed.
You know what I mean? And so we're gonna do a whole show on snitches and stitches. That's gonna be the next show that we're gonna do, whether that is fact or fiction, whether there should be protection or not. So stay tuned, folks. But when you see things printed in the media, in the news, if it is accurate, you can't come after them. Look, once again, if you got 3 co-workers and you're at the job and one co-worker tells another co-worker, look, you better be careful, so-and-so got sloppy work. And let's just say that turns out not to be true. Well, no, you don't have a case for libel. You don't have a case for slander, right? There's certain, qualified privilege type of information where it doesn't apply, right? If you say, Ed is a murderer, right? And you're doing it to warn the public, not to necessarily hurt him. Now it gets a little tricky, but if you're doing it to warn the public, if you're doing it because there's common interests at work, like, look, the work is sloppy, be on the lookout for that, then you might not be you might not be subject to that type of lawsuit. So it's not an all or nothing. You know it when you see it. That means you shouldn't go around saying what is untrue as if it is true. The hard part is that I wonder if Cardi B ever is going to get the 1.25. I mean, is Tasha balling like that? You know what I mean? I mean, does she really have it like that?
Well, I think what was so injurious here is apparently she seems to be a popular blogger, I believe, or someone who comments on these celebrities online and is followed by many.
I don't know what the payout is on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's the payout on that?
Sponsors.
What's the payout? Unless they're sponsors. I don't see Tasha doing any commercials because we all know, hey, everybody note to self that if you have a high TikTok rating and you're out there on social media, you can wind up getting a commercial. I've seen numerous of faces of individuals that are highly profiled on TikTok, and now they're in commercials. I've never seen, I don't know what the worth is. So yes, it's one thing to have the suit. It's another thing to get the award. It's a third thing is to grab that bag.
And frankly, I think with Cardi B's how can I say it, wealth or financial well-being, I'm not sure that she was in it for the money per se, but more
definitely
to
not
deal and also to discourage anybody else who's even thinking about, putting false statements about her out there. And Royce is absolutely right, because what's going to happen is the judge is going to, you have this award, you want to turn it into a judgment, and then she wants to, at that point, or her attorneys, be able to then try to attach assets or find assets and then attach that award to them and basically force Tasha K to pay, unless of course she comes to some sort of settlement or some sort of compromise as to paying some of this money, or coming up with some way to do it. But I think I think we discussed this earlier, Royce, for those who think, oh, well, I want to sue and it falls within the elements, once again, can you finance this type of litigation?
That's right, because no one's taking it on contingency where they're waiting to get paid at the end, because it is not like you're suing a corporation, you're suing an individual. And what we're talking about is judgment proof, right? You got the award, but can you get money? Can you get, water out of a stone? You can't get it. So, and as you said, as far as a lien is concerned, yes, it's one thing to have a lien to attach maybe Tasha K's house, but you have to wait till she sells it, right? And will she sell it at a point where it's profitable, right? Some people sell it when sell their assets when the market is low, so they can get from underneath the lien, so they don't have to pay you on the dollar of what is owed to. So there's a lot of things that go on that go beyond, yes, I won this money and the judge said I won it. You still have to go and get it.
And well, I think to both of your points, as far as Cardi B is concerned, she just wanted it loud and clear that you can't write lies about me, and that she's one that will sue. That if you do, and the fact that she was able to win, that also it's a warning. It's a warning because there are she's not the only blogger out there that's written questionable information, but she got called on it and it went all the way to court. So,
but that also says something else on the other end, right? If Tasha K is the blogger that she is, and lawsuits haven't been falling out the tree left and right because of what she's saying, then you could bank on what she's saying is true.
On the other side,
and there's a lot more that she said than being sued. That's just, and look, and that might be the business model. The business model, like, yeah, I was sued by this one, but look at the 1,000 people I've talked about, only one person came and said that this is false. So I'm batting pretty good. So if I tell you it's going to rain tomorrow, you better bring your umbrella.
Yeah, I mean, or you have people who are facing the dilemma that we were just talking about in terms of, you know, being able to finance it too. You know?
Look. The public figures that she's talking about, they ain't facing a dilemma to finance it.
Yeah,
You,
yeah,
me, on the guy on
you're right.
137th Street, we might be facing, but the people she talking about, they got the loot, they got the bag,
Yeah, you're right. You're
they
right.
got the bag.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, interesting, but at least, everyone can be aware. Just don't go out there spewing information that you haven't fact checked, because you can land yourself up in a situation like this.
Yeah,
So
don't go
as
out there and say that, Dr. Grant is beautiful and things like that. Don't be running out your mouth out there like that. You gotta chill it out. Ed is
so
handsome.
funny.
You gotta slow it down a little bit. Don't go do that
Oh
because
my
you don't know.
goodness.
You might wind up in court. Ed might be offended by that. You don't want that happening. So slow down, everybody. Slow down.
Oh my goodness gracious. As we continue and talk about this judge rejecting the plea deal in the Ahmaud Arbery case, which is um, not finished. This continues to evolve around this plea deal situation. And I'm definitely curious to hear our legal experts weigh in on this news story.
Yeah, and look, I think the judge stepped in. Um, this is my opinion. Less about the actual numbers, that terms of imprisonment or the essence of the agreement, and more in, if we're going to be just, if we're going to dispense justice and we're going to be fair, how can this go on and the victims have no say so? That, I mean, the takeaway for me, and I see this in court on a day-to-day, right? On a day-to-day in state court, where a prosecutor will say, we're going to dispose of this case this way. And the victim may not even know that that's happening, or they're informed on the back end, or there's some unilateral decision. Well, we think the case is going to be hard to prove, so therefore we don't want to go forward with it. Right now, I'm stretching. We're talking about the plea deal that the judge says, look, the family has an issue with it. We're not going to allow it to go further or go forward, but let's take that idea and let's expand it to what I see on a regular basis, which is, we're going to resolve this case in this way. And the victim is like, I didn't have a say so. Or just because you think we're going to lose that trial, maybe I still want my day in court. Maybe I want to swing that bat. And so it is done in a variety of ways. Kudos to the judge for stepping in, but it's been done in a variety of ways where the prosecutor would take over what the outcome will be.
Now, just to be clear for the audience, as many will recall, there was already a trial in state court. These individuals were found guilty. There was so there was a conviction, and then they got sentenced, I believe, to life, each of them.
Right.
And so now as we reported or discussed on previous shows, then there was also a federal civil rights criminal proceeding that was taking place as well. And so this is what we're talking about here. Now we're talking about that federal proceeding, and the Department of Justice, which is where, basically they're the ones that were handling this as the prosecutors. They apparently discussed with, I believe, two of these defendants, not all three, a plea deal where they would do 30 years, I believe it was. And this was filed, the court date, the court proceeding was scheduled for that Monday. And my understanding is that they went ahead and filed the paperwork concerning this plea deal on that Sunday or Sunday night with, and that's what's really concerning this family, that the DOJ attorneys who were handling this didn't have the quote unquote decency to sit down with the family and say, hey, listen, this is what we're thinking about doing, planning on doing. How do you feel before we go ahead and do it? Or file the paperwork in such a way where they would have notice and be able to, respond before the court proceedings. So also, I'd like to mention as well that they still have, this is a plea. These defendants still have the option of just going ahead and entering a plea and allowing the judge to render whatever sentence she sees fit without any sort of plea deal in place. And I mention that really because if there's no plea, my understanding is that trial is scheduled to proceed, or jury selection to proceed, I believe, either this Friday or the following Monday. So
no one really wants to leave it up to a judge to make a determination as to what the sentence will be on a plea unless you really know that judge. So one, I can understand the defendants avoiding that situation. I'm going to shed a little light on what.
My thing, and what I heard was that the deal would allow them to do the 30 years in a federal facility versus the state, which is in you know, and I don't know what the conditions of the state prisons are in Georgia, but apparently they're worse than the than what you would find in terms of conditions wise in a federal facility. So that bothered a lot of folks, including the family and the attorney Lee Merritt.
Well, it should bother them, but at the end of the day, if they were convicted, they would do their federal time most likely first anyway, right? So they're not avoiding something. Ultimately, they would do their federal time because federal court is seen to be the most prestigious and, you know, the most heavy penalty wise, the most punitive. So that would happen. However, there's been times where people have to finish their state sentence and then they go to federal. It's usually the reverse. And usually when you try a case in the federal level, the penalty is so stiff that it winds up encompassing the state, you know, sentence as well.
I think that's the difference here, because right. It appears that the state conviction and sentence is much harsher, more severe,
right.
being life. So
right, but one, obviously this was mishandled because the family should be consulted. I'm not too concerned with the filing happening in the middle of the night or you know, on, you know, while everybody's sleeping, the filing happens, because when you practice in federal court, that's what usually happens. You can wake up the next day in the morning and there'll be 3 motions waiting for you, and you on trial, how they're gonna bring in this witness and bring in that witness and do a whole bunch of things. That's just how the government works. It's unfortunate. I call it unfair surprise. Some people call it just having it manpower. You should anticipate what is going to happen. But at the end of the day, the teachable moment and the takeaway is that the family should have been consulted, and the judge put a halt to that, saying, look, this family's not going to be railroaded. We're going to make sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. Yeah,
I'm wondering if heads are going to roll behind this, because this is definitely not a good look for Biden DOJ.
Well, Biden, he needs to get a haircut some type of way anyway, because he's not looking all that great right about now. Anyway, I mean, we already have election laws that are like in the ways. We haven't pulled the strings on that, right? We just can't get the act together. So just add this on the list.
No good, as my mom would say, no good.
You're on mute, Dr. Grant. We can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you, doctor.
Oh yeah, I muted myself while I was drinking my water on the set. Sorry. But yeah, no bueno at all with some of the things that we're seeing. But we're gonna watch how this plays out. I'm curious to see what the final will be, because the whole world is watching, as per usual, anything that happens here in the United States. But as we continue on to our next story, we have some more interesting news. This one, because my sons are NFL fans, I caught a gander on this storyline. And then, of course, our legal experts have some information to weigh in on. But accidental Belichick text at the center of this discrimination lawsuit being brought by an African-American coach. What say you?
There's a lot to be said. There's nothing accidental when it comes down to Bill Belichick. Allegedly, upon information and belief. all the words you want to put there, since we talked about libel and slander, right? Coincidences, like this, how many times do they happen in the world? So what is this lawsuit about? This lawsuit is about Brian Flores, who was the coach of the Miami Dolphins and was the coach for the Miami Dolphins for 3 years. The first year had a very poor season. The second year had double-digit wins, and the third year was one game shy from having double-digit wins and making the playoff. So by all means and by all measures, he was a successful coach with a franchise that was not doing so well. Full disclosure, I'm a Miami Dolphin fan. And so I have told my colleagues here that I will speak as a fan and then speak as a legal analyst in reference to what's going on here. So upon him not making the playoffs this year, he was terminated. He had a 5-year contract. He served 3 years. That is not unusual. 5-year contract, you do about 3 to see where you are in the turnaround, because in most sports, there is this thing that people believe that the coach loses the locker room because the players have been hearing your voice over and over again. So it's time to reevaluate. That appeared to be some of the case here. It appears to be some other things that happened. But when I first heard of this, I was like, sour grapes, timeliness is off. You got fired from the Miami Dolphins because they said you couldn't collaborate with others. You try to emulate someone like Bill Belichick. As far as I can see, this is my opinion. This is not truth. I don't know him well. I'm just peering into it, that you try to emulate the coaching style of someone that's been coaching forever, and it rubbed people the wrong way. And so based upon you being terminated, you then had to go out there and look for a job. There were at least nine vacancies in reference to jobs for head coaches. His name was running rampant as being the favorite by the media to receive several of these jobs. One in particular, the New York Giants job, which he loved and wanted, and he didn't get. And now you have the lawsuit. And so superficially, you would say knee-jerk reaction. You're crying over spilled milk. You didn't get the job you wanted, and now you're bringing this class action. When you were fired, you didn't bring it. And when you thought you were in the runnings for these other positions, you didn't bring it. But when you didn't get the job that you wanted, now you're bringing a lawsuit. That's me speaking as a fan. That's me speaking on the surface. That's me speaking, not knowing what I know and having done the work that I've done to look at it more closely. Why is he suing? Well, he's not suing because he got terminated from the Dolphins, because to me, that would be a weak claim. How can you say that you got terminated because you didn't listen to the boss or because you were black, when that happened in year 1, 2019, and you stayed on 3 more years to 2022 or 21? There's this thing called attenuation that kind of makes it implausible, and we all know.
Now you're referring to the claim that I believe it was the owner offered him $100,000 to.
Right. I'm referring to a wrongful termination. Right. I'm referring to a wrongful termination claim against one entity. And so, once again, as a fan and looking at that, I'm like, bro, you really can't move that forward because you weren't fired. You stayed on another 2 years and you were successful. And there's really no claim of hostile work environment, because the owner in his first year, as Ed said, the way the NFL works is that if you finish in last place, you get a better draft position. And usually draft pick or draft position to make a pick. You may decide that you take your position and trade it and get another player that's already playing, but you get that position. And usually at the end of the year, which the Jets were famous for this, everybody would be yelling, "Don't win a game! Don't win a game! Why are you going to win a game? You're going to mess it up." And what would happen is that they would win a couple of games, and next thing you know, they can't get that draft pick that they wanted. It happens every single year. The teams that are in last place, everybody's saying that they're going to lay down. Not only does it happen with teams in last place, it happens with teams that are in first place, teams that are doing very well, and the playoffs are coming. And what they do is that they won't play their star players. They'll lay down too. So the phenomenon of laying down in this league is known. Fans know it. Insiders know it. Outsiders know it. This is what happens. Now, you put a dollar amount on that, that is something that is unique. As Ed said, Miami Dolphins said, look, for every game that you lose, allegedly, reportedly, don't know this to be true, that you would get more money. You get another $100,000. He rejected that. And what happened is that the last 5 games, they won. That prevented the Miami Dolphins from getting the number 1 pick, the person that they wanted. Now, the person that they wanted is now in the Super Bowl right now. You know what I mean? That person is now in the Super Bowl right now. Right.
Now you're speaking to an additional claim. He states that the owner wanted him to try to recruit this quarterback.
No, back up. Had he lost the games that he was supposed to lose, they would have got the number 1 pick and they would have drafted Burrow because Tua got hurt. And Burrow was the number 1 dude that they would have drafted. Burrow's now in the Super Bowl. So
for the Cincinnati,
because they didn't get that pick, they try to offer the Cincinnati Bengals all their picks to get the number 1 pick. Cincinnati said, no bueno. We like our pick. See you later. Hence started the controversy as to whether or not the quarterback that they did get is the right quarterback. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning that is because if he sued for wrongful termination, which I first thought that this was partly about, I was saying you don't have a case, bro, because you didn't resign. So that you could say constructive termination, that because I didn't do something, they treated me poorly, which made it a hostile work environment. So that's basically terminating me without saying it. So I had to leave, and you stayed and you were successful. So that moved that away. Then I started to realize, well, that's not really that's not his claim. His claim is that this Rooney Rule, and we'll explain it, is not being enforced. It is happening, but it doesn't have any teeth. It has good intentions, but it doesn't have any impact. And he is part of the black head coaches that have been affected by this Rooney Rule, which says that every organization has to interview at least 2 people of color. One of the interviews have to be in person. You have one on the phone, the other one has to be in person. All right. The rule used to say 1, but now it says 2. Not only that, if you interview someone of color within your organization, that doesn't count. Get it? So the rule says you have to at least interview at least 2 people of color, and they have to have one of those interviews has to be in person. Can't just do it over the phone. It has to be in person.
Now, as with everything else, the controversy here is that, okay, you have a rule. Is it a rule that is being either enforced, or does it have some quality control aspect to it? Because what Brian Flores is alleging is that now the NFL teams are conducting sham interviews that aren't real, that they're just pro forma, they're just going through the motions of following this rule, but not in a quality way. They're not offering genuine interviews. They're not genuinely interested in these candidates. They're just bringing them in and so they can check off the box.
And not only is he saying that, he's saying that you add that with the fact that successful black coaches that are actually coaching teams like himself are being fired and not given second chances. And so to that extent, he speaks about Tony Dungy back in the early 2000s, very successful coach of I think it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, got terminated next year later or the year after that. John Gruden takes the team to the Super Bowl, basically all his players. You can even extrapolate that to what people talk about in reference to Mark Jackson with the Golden State Warriors. Was the coach of the Golden State Warriors, had Steph Curry, had all the crew, got fired. Steve Kerr goes and wins the championship. You know, so this people of color being successful but yet still getting terminated, where white folks, white coaches are unsuccessful, moderately successful, and they still get their job. They get second and third and fourth terms. This is not a new phenomenon. It's just that he is now standing up and actually litigating it now.
And just and in that vein, you know, he's claiming that the Giants conducted a sham interview, the New York Giants.
Oh wow.
And that instead they, you know, he finds out through the headline here, this quote unquote accidental text, that this other candidate is the one that is actually going to get the job even before it was announced and before he was informed that he was no longer a candidate for the position.
Now, once again, as a fan, I was first like, oh man, get out of here, man. You just look. But then stop. Critical mind, critical thinking. This is not the first time this happened. In 2019, he interviewed with the Denver Broncos, and he alleges that the owners came an hour late. They looked like they were drinking the night before, and the interview was like not about anything. Now, to his defense, he probably didn't bring a lawsuit then, because that same year he got the Miami Dolphins job, right?
Exactly.
So I understand. I'm not mad at you. Not a Colin Kaepernick. We're on the job. I don't care what's going on. I'm on the job. I'm gonna fight for rights. You wait until some collateral damage happened to you for you to fight for rights. But hey, somebody got to stand up, right? Somebody's there. So I applaud you. I don't like the way his attorneys are like, oh, he's the Rosa Parks. No. Don't use our heroines, you know, our heroes in a fashion that you're not allowed to use. I'm sorry. You know, it's not written in the Bible. It's not written in any state law, but we have proprietorship and ownership on that. You don't. Stop. Don't do that. This is just Royce Russell speaking. Nobody else got. Just don't.
Where the legal meets the cultural.
It looks disingenuous. It don't even feel right. All right.
And just to be clear, this is being filed. Well, the defendants are the NFL and the three teams, correct?
Correct.
Meaning the Miami Dolphins, the New York Giants, and the Denver Broncos. Also, this is being filed with the intent of having it eventually certified as a class action.
Right.
Now, what is a class action? A class action is when you have numerous plaintiffs, and one representative is representing the interests of all of these plaintiffs and attempting to obtain an outcome that would be binding on all of them. But as I stated, I use the word certification because the judge that's assigned to the case is ultimately going to be the one that will have to decide whether it qualifies for class action status. From the latest report I heard, no one else has signed on yet to this class action. So, you know, it remains to be seen whether it will ultimately be certified. Because most of the time, when it comes to a class action like this, you'll have, say, 40 some odd plaintiffs, you know, 40 people that are making the claim, and the claims have to be, you know, they have to be basically the same. They have to be common. They have to be typical. And, you know, the representative has to be able to represent the interests of them all. So we'll see what happens.
Well, to that point, as a fan, I was infuriated, and I was saying not infuriated. I was curious in that when I heard that he mentioned other potential people, potential coaches, people that are interviewing now, and he named them. Like, you know, I'm not going to leave that alone, but he named them, right? I'm saying, oh my God, man, these guys are out here still interviewing right now. What are you doing? Like, you stepping all over their toes. Like if they name Royce Russell as a guy who, you know, who's going to get railroad, when I come to the interview, everybody's going to look at me like, yeah, all right, let's just ask some soft questions here. That's what I looked at as a fan.
Well,
right?
maybe not.
Well,
Maybe his lawsuit is what's going to make the difference in them saying, you know what, we need to do the right thing here. We're under pressure here. We need to go ahead because in the case of the Giants, I believe either the last 3 or 4 coaches that they've hired that they've ended up terminating, none of these individuals had head coaching experience before they got the job.
No, my point is this. My point is this: is that you should have the consent or the wherewithal to say, Ed, I'm about to use your name. That's my point. It's very simple. It's a very baseline point, because every brother's not a brother and everybody's not for the struggle. And for you to assume that is a problem. But that's me on a common level, on just a one-on-one base level. Before I say, hey, Ed is down with me, Ed feels the same way, I better get on the phone and make sure
you need to talk to me first, right?
No, because you have to, as attorneys, you have to anticipate what's going to happen. What do you think is going to happen, NFL? They're going to get on the phone with Ed. Ed, this is the way you feel? And if Ed is hearing it for the first time, guess what Ed may say? Nah, no bueno, bro. I don't know Jesus Christ. I don't know Jesus Christ 3 times. I'm out of here. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, so they're going to look like
that was as a fan. That was as a fan. As a lawyer, I'm hoping that the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. And then looking at certification and looking at class actions, is not about whether the other parties consent to being part of the class, or whether I went to them to find out if they want. In theory, what we're asking the court is that these people will be affected by my litigation, and judge, to prevent duplication of efforts in the eyes of judicial economy. If any of one of these people want to bring their individual claim, why would you want to go through that 40 times? Let me come and bring this claim, and then we can have a remedy that the other folks won't have to bring their causes of action, because we will have resolved everything here. But that was, once again, as a fan and as a lawyer, you have to look at it both ways. But going back to the point real quick, what makes this case a strong case, and I commend him for standing up for it. And here's the timeline so folks can know it. He ain't just like scratching his behind and saying this. The timeline is solid. January 21st, the Bills' assistant general manager, Joe Schoen, is hired as the GM for the Giants. January 21st, the Bills' offensive coordinator interviews with the Giants via telephone. 21st. The 22nd, the Bills' Leslie Frazier, who's African-American, interviews with the Giants by way of telephone, right? So far they have complied with part 1 of the Rooney Rule. They got at least one African-American, and need 2. They got one by phone, Leslie Frazier. January 23rd, the defensive coordinator for the Bengals interviews with the Giants. January 24th, Dan Quinn, white guy, all interviews in person with the Giants. January 25th, Brian DeBall, the guy who's eventually hired, interviews for the second time. So he has an interview on the 21st and he has an interview on the 25th. Put a pin on the 25th. It's important. January 26th, the Giants then interview their defensive coordinator, Patrick Graham, who's also a brother, but he works within the organization. Doesn't count against the Rooney Rule, but so far they interviewed 2 people of color. January 26th, Brian Flores has dinner with the folks from the Giants, right? I don't know if that's considered an interview. It could be considered an interview, but they have dinner. January 27th, he has an in-person interview. So that means now the Rooney Rule is met. 2 people of color, at least one interview is in person. So they have that. That's on the 27th. Right? What Flores is saying is on the 24th, because he said it happened 3 days before. And if you want to look at the 26th dinner being an interview, that would make it the 23rd. He hears from Bill Belichick, who tells him about what? Let's go to exactly what Belichick says. Sounds like you have landed. Congratulations. Do you hear? And then Brian Flores says, do you hear something I didn't? Bill Belichick puts in question marks, Giants. And then he says, I interview on Thursday. So it didn't happen yet. I interview on Thursday. And he says, and then he goes, I think I have a shot. Then he responds, got it. I hear from Buffalo and New York that you are their guy. That's what Belichick is telling him on the 24th. You are their guy. Hope it works out. If you want it to work out. And then Flores says, that's definitely what I want. I hope you're right, coach. Thank you. And then he says that's his dream job. And then he says, this is coach. Are you talking to Brian Flores? Do you want to text me or do you want to text Brian DeBall? Just making sure. And then my man says, sorry. This is Belichick says, sorry, I fucked this up. I double checked and I misread the text. I think they are talking about the ball. I'm sorry. So he's saying that the Giants is talking about the ball. They ain't even talking about him. This is on the 24th, and he has yet to have his interview on the 27th. And so he says thanks. So that's where he's alleging that the Rooney Rule is baloney, right? It is.
So let's pause for a moment. Michael has a question. What will happen to the status of the class action if no other coaches come forward to be a part of the lawsuit? Great question, Michael. Thanks for tuning in. And hey, Kevin.
Well, here's the answer in part. My understanding is that, once again, the class action doesn't necessarily have to deal with bodies, right, to a degree. Part of one of the elements that you have to prove is that there are people that will be affected based upon your lawsuit, and to prevent duplicity and in the eyes of judicial economy, I can represent those people who are similarly situated who are not coming forward at this time. So when they do come forward, we already have the rule. We already have what the court is going to rule on. We already have the form of relief. Or based upon my victory, they won't even have to come forward because the rule will be set out. That's part of it. All right. Now, what will happen is that folks will be asked whether they want to join the class or not. So some of it is about having the people, and some of it is about judicial of economy and economics of the court and preserving duplicity of evidence coming in and having that done 40 or 50 times, and whether or not there's similarly situated people that will be affected by this. Now, you take what happened with him with the Giants, and you take what happened with him with Denver, that to me makes a case which stands on its own about Rooney. What makes a case about discrimination of African-American coaches in general is that now you start to add in what happened to Tony Dungy, what happened to, there's one part in his complaint that said several African-Americans didn't even interview for one job because the owner, for the 49ers, the owners made it known that we want Steve Marinucci for that job. And therefore, Black coaches said, we're not even going to interview. They already made it known that they want. Now, let's double back. Remember I was talking about early on in one of these episodes that, the president should just do his job, just do his work, not necessarily say, I want a Black woman to fill this seat because the backlash that it will cause, because now it becomes about color and not education and qualifications, even though we know we meet it all. But when you send that type of message, now you're sending up a red flag that somebody can say, hey, man, this is preordained. I'm being discriminated against.
Well, even if you comply with the Rooney Rule, once again, you're conducting sham interviews.
Right. So even on the highest level, United States Supreme Court president, to the lowest level, when we're dealing with the NFL, that's a problem. So that's what happened in early 2000s or early 1999, late 1990s with Steve Marinucci, that the brother said, we're not even going to interview. You take it full circle, you come down to 2022, and you have this situation that quite apparently appears to be a sham situation, that really affects the Rooney Rule. Everything else to me is really talk about discriminatory practices within the NFL, whether it's the Dolphins, whether it is coaches getting fired when they have marginal records compared to other folks. We know that is the everyday.
And what's interesting here is, and I don't know if you concur, Roy, but when it first came up at the end of this season, how there was only going to be one black coach in the NFL, which for the audience, for those who don't watch football, but I'm sure are aware, 90% of the players are black, and none of the owners are black. I mean, it's just, and so when I heard that there was going to be a situation this coming season where there was only going to be one African American coach, that being Mike Tomlin of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I was like, wow, because
who never had a losing season.
There was at least about about 4 black coaches in the NFL at the same time. I believe you had Marvin Lewis, you had Mike Tomlin, you had you had 2 others. I mean, there was a nice group, not that I was completely happy, but it seemed like the rule was working.
Well, I can tell you this one thing for sure. If you look at the players in the league, it feels to me that the NFL doesn't want anything and does not want to look like the NBA. Because if you look at the NBA now, the white folks that are on the NBA are foreigners. Think about it. Think about your favorite teams. Think about it. You can't find anybody on the Knicks that's white. You can't find Joe Harris is on the Nets. You can't find nobody in LA but that one rookie. Atlanta, you got 2 guys. Maybe in Boston, you got 2 guys. The numbers are small, and if it's not small, it's 0. And if it's not 0, it's from overseas. And even though the numbers of coaches that are head coaches are not necessarily overwhelming, they're getting to reflect the league a little bit. You're starting to hear those names, and things are starting to happen. People are starting to get more opportunities. In the NFL, that's not happening. Now, whether you mention Miami Dolphins or you mention the Giants, or whether you mention Denver and the Giants in reference to the Rooney Rule, only thing you got to do is say to yourself is this. What happens if one day you woke up and the National Hockey League had nothing but black coaches? You were like, wait a minute. They got almost maybe 1% of black players that play hockey. How the hell is the league run by black coaches? You will find that to be crazy. Something's wrong there. That doesn't compute. But when it comes down to the NFL, you take those same numbers. 70% of the league is African American or people of color, and less than 3%, less than 1% people of color that are coaches. Just flip the script, and you will see that it's wrong. You don't even need to point out. You don't even need to point out any team. You could just see right there that it's wrong.
And this is somebody, I think it was Bob, said this is really going to blow up. Let's see who comes aboard, with this class action. Let's see how far it goes. Somebody has to be the first to advocate when things are not right. And that's what we talk about here on the show, what's happening, the legal perspective, and where the legal meets the cultural. So more to come of this story, I'm sure, because this is just breaking, but we are at the top of the hour once again. Time flies when we're having fun. And we want to thank Kevin and Michael and Bob and everyone else for tuning in live. Those who catch the replay, you can leave your comments, just put #replay so we know you're catching it. And share this out with those who you think would also appreciate what we share here on the show. So with that said, let me let our legal experts say their final goodbyes for today, and then be safe and warm for those in the Northeast still in snow, and those in warm weather. Send some sun our way. So we'll start with you, Mr. Russell.
Well, look, I want you to really follow this case because I think it's really important. Everybody usually come around and bread is broken around sports and music, right? Bread is usually thrown at one another with religion and politics, right? We all know that. So this is a kumbaya type of moment here. Sports really do bring people together, and music really does as well. And we know the areas that set people apart, and there's no pun intended, religion and politics, definitely. So I think this is worthy. I always said that sports is a microcosm of what is happening in the real world, and we can see it. We can see it. We can take this and make it CEOs, CFOs, COOs, lawyers getting contracts. We can go down the list. So stay tuned.
And I would say to everyone, please have a happy, or I just want to recognize the beginning of Black History Month. And I would ask those in the audience to pay attention to all of the wonderful events that take place during this beautiful month, and watch out for the many documentaries, events, and information that pops up. And yes, please continue to pay attention to this lawsuit, because I think it's definitely momentous. And there are many other things happening as well that we need to make sure we maintain an awareness of, including, of course, what's happening in that Ahmaud Arbery case.
Absolutely. And you preempted my closeout for Black History Month, because we are Black History, and your girl is featured on 1010 Wins for Black History Month. So you catch some clips from the interview and running on that. So make sure you check that out as well. I was going to play it, but you can go to 1010 Wins and you'll see the Black History Month feature. Honored to do that. We all stand on the shoulders of our foremothers and fathers who came before us, and we should be an example of them doing their best work through us. So be safe, be blessed, and we'll be back next week, same time, same place, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard on Wednesday. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.